we're doing a design workshop today. That's where you send me pictures of your spaces that you're having trouble with, and then I show you what I would do if it were my house. And this week we're doing this living room. It's actually a really great size room, and the TV is huge. This TV is 98 inches, which is arguably too large. These are the inspiration images that she selected. Architectural character, color and pattern, and lots of layering will be a must for this room. Let's take a look at some really quick basic things that I typically end up recommending. When it comes to having a TV space with a console underneath it, I highly recommend that that console is always wider than the TV. And in fact, in this case, I'm going to recommend it being wide enough that you can also have sconces on either side of the TV. Doing so will help keep this wall feeling a little bit more balanced and less top heavy. Also, when it comes to curtains, these curtains just barely cover the windows. I recommend going as high as you can, and I would definitely recommend going wider than this. And because we are combating the TV so much with this one, I actually think a darker curtain or a heavier curtain would be better in this situation because we want to be drawing the eye up. She specifically said she wanted a living room that felt magazine worthy. And so let's dive into that a little bit. Something that I see a lot with magazine worthy spaces is that they're not TV centric. They have more conversational style seating, which means unfortunately this sectional doesn't quite fit that. And it doesn't quite fit the inspiration images with the colorful furniture. Magazine worthy spaces also tend to have a lot of personality and a lot of unique elements, which you're not going to find at most stores. You're going to want to look at a lot of thrifting, a lot of vintage, and then a lot of artists, sculptures, unique wall art, things like that. With keeping that in mind, let's get started on the floor plan. In order to make a space that is more magazine worthy, you want to decentralize the TV and make conversation the focus. Instead of the sectional, I grabbed just a long sofa and a couple of chairs with a large coffee table instead of just an ottoman. When you have things facing each other like this, it's less about the TV and more about the conversations that could be having. Depending on how you use this space, you could double up chairs on both sides, which could be really nice depending on how much space you have. But for now, I'm going to recommend just these two chairs, and I actually think swivel chairs will be great for this instance because it'll allow you to still be able to watch movies together as a family and then also still have that conversation style spacing. One of the things people like to do is they like to put all their furniture up against the walls, and I'm actually going to recommend that we pull this off the wall. I think you have the space to get away with that. I think it could be nice to have a wall of bookshelves behind the sofa, but again, that means you might want to move this a little bit more forward so that the space behind the sofa is larger. Now, the downside to doing that is that this is a very large TV, and we are scooting the sofa closer and closer and closer to the TV. This TV is too big to have the whole living room space pushed all the way up that way. So in this case, I think I'm just going to recommend a sofa table here with some lamps on some large side tables next to the swivel chairs and a sofa. Now over here where there was that one chair and a side table, I might recommend two options. One, having some sort of vintage piece of furniture with shelving on it in order to capture some of the books and scholarly vibes that the inspiration images had. Having open shelving like this could be really helpful for that, or even just styling books on a coffee table or on some side tables could really help bring that look together. And if seating is something you are worried about, I also like the idea of putting a couple little ottomans on the other side of the coffee table if you really want to fill out the space more, or if you decide not to have that sofa table. That would allow for a heavy emphasis on conversational seating. Or if you decide not to have that vintage piece of furniture over there, I think this with maybe a cute console table over top of it could be a good fit for that. Here's an example of what it could look like to have bookshelves behind the sofa. Having the bookshelves wider than the sofa would be ideal. And if you've got room for it, I really love the idea of furniture niches where the sofa or even a bed tucks really nicely into some built-ins. If you don't have the windows, doing something like this could be a great way to make the large TV feel like it's a part of something. And you could also hide it. This was a pretty creative solution with like barn door sliding hardware. Here are some spaces that I've seen that are magazine worthy, but you'll notice the heavy emphasis on conversational seating. Here's one that instead of a coffee table, it's this very large ottoman. Another conversational style sofa and chair arrangement, especially with the books in the back. And this one is a good example that shows those little stools on the other side of the coffee table, like I was mentioning. If you're into it, I'm really into window valances right now, or window cornices. I think that they're really cool and I'm itching to do one in my house. I would recommend possibly doing some sort of box trim molding on the walls. I know I recommend that for a lot of people, but it is really in right now. It is also really classic, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily trendy. Or if you don't want to do it on the walls, maybe trying something on the ceiling. Alternatively, I love the look of these beams with the wood corbels on the end. I think that that is such a stunning look. The one thing I have to say though is your balustrade is a more modern industrial look, and if you want your home to have character, it's got to have the same personality. So you don't want to have something like this in the same space that has like that super modern industrial railing. I would recommend changing out your railing. This one is still modern, but it carries the wood tone, so this could be a good option for a more transitional architectural base. Or you could have fun with it and try something like this, or something like this. These looks have really been inspiring me recently. And this is the mood board I made to try to bring it all together. You'll see the wider console table with battery-powered sconces to make it easy in case you don't want to add wiring. And a lot of people recommended adding a frame to the TV. And then this light over here that I have on top of this lawyer bookshelf, both of these together give a very scholarly look, the very academic look that I think ties into the inspiration images really well. And since there's not enough room on that one wall with all of the windows for a ton of curtains, I think doing a relaxed Roman shade still gives you the softness of curtains without taking up as much space. In order to balance out the visual heaviness of the TV, I made sure that the furniture leaned a little bit darker or visually heavy like that coffee table. I love doing these. I do them every week, so make sure to tune back in. See you next week.